Hello, this is Mr. Davis, and these are the Style Pile Notes. These notes are a series of lessons that are designed to help writers add sentence variety and style to their writing so that we can go beyond simple sentences such as, my dog ran, to more complicated and stylish structures like, my dog, the beautiful, courageous pug, ran hideously slow. These lessons are brief, free of overly complicated grammar jargon, and should be accessible for all learners. So, what do you need to do these Style Pile Notes? If you're in my class, ask for a copy, or if you're not in my class, print a copy of the Style Pile Notes. Here's how it works. Watch the lessons while filling in your notes. You only need the parts that are in red font. If you want to take down more notes than what's in the red font, you're free to do so. Today's Style Pile lesson is going to focus on appositives. So, the first box on your Style Pile notes says, what is it? Well, we're talking about appositives today. Second box on your Style Pile notes says rules and examples. So, these are going to be the rules and examples for appositives. If you need to pause your video for a moment to get these rules down, please feel free to do so. First rule, letter A, they must come directly after a noun. Second rule, letter B, appositives give more info about the noun. Third rule, they have a comma before and a comma after. Fourth rule, the sentence has to make sense without the appositive. So if we look at this example down here, Billy, the kid in my class, talks a lot. Let's check to make sure it follows all of these rules up above. The appositive must come directly after the noun. Well, Billy is a noun. He is a person. Here is the appositive right here. Second rule, appositives give more info about the noun. Billy, well, who is this Billy kid? The kid in my class, that's who he is. C, they have a comma before and a comma after. We've got a comma before the appositive and a comma after the appositive. Now the fourth rule, D, the sentence has to make sense without the appositive. The easiest way to check this is you just cross out the appositive and you read the sentence. Billy talks a lot. That makes sense. So that means we used the appositive correctly. Again, if you need more time, just pause the video. Let's move on to the next slide. So, I want you to pause the video here and I want you to think to yourself, what is wrong with this sentence based on the 4 rules we just learned? Hopefully you took a moment to pause the video and think about what was wrong with this sentence. Let's check our 4 rules. First rule is the appositive has to come right after a noun. Well, theater is a noun, so it looks like we've got the appositive in the right place. The second rule is that it has to describe the noun. The theater that is near, okay, that's a little bit awkward, so it's not really following that second rule. The third rule is it has to be surrounded by commas. Okay, it's surrounded by commas. Now let's check the fourth rule, and I think you're going to see what is wrong with this sentence if you haven't seen it yet. The theater that is near my house. I can't even read it without making it sound awkward, but let's do that fourth test, right? I'll cross this out. The theater, my house. Okay, that sentence makes absolutely no sense. So it breaks rule number 2 and it breaks rule number 4 as well. We can't take the appositive out and still have the sentence make sense. So I want you to pause the video for a moment and decide, does this fix the problem that we just saw? Alright, let's look at it together. The theater, which is near my house, is closed today. Let's check our 4 rules. First rule is the appositive has to come after a noun. We've got the noun theater here, and look, the appositive is right here. Second rule, it needs to give more info about the noun. The theater, well, what about this theater, which is near my house? It's the one close to my house. Cool, that gives me more info. Third rule, it has to be surrounded by commas, boom and boom. Fourth rule, we need to be able to take the appositive out of the sentence, and the sentence still needs to make sense, so let's cross that guy out and let's read it. The theater is closed today. That sentence makes sense without the appositive, therefore we use the appositive correctly. I have a different question for you now. Does this sentence use an appositive correctly? So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I want you to pause the video for a moment and you decide, does this sentence use an appositive correctly? Okay, let's look at it together. It says, Frank, the guy who purposely sneezed in the potato salad, was asked to leave the party. And I think for good cause. If we've got people sneezing in the potato salad, we're probably going to have to ask them to leave, right? All right, let's check our first rule. Rule number 1, it has to follow a noun. Frank is a noun, and here looks like the appositive. Second rule, it has to give more info about the noun. Frank, well, Frank is this gross guy that sneezed in the potato salad. That gives us some more info about him. Third rule, it needs to be surrounded by commas, boom and boom. Fourth rule, we need to be able to take it out of the sentence, and the sentence still needs to make sense. So, Frank was asked to leave the party. That makes sense. Therefore, we use the appositive correctly. What about this example? I want you to pause the video for a moment and decide, does this example use an appositive correctly? All right, so if you said this slide that it used an appositive correctly, guess what? You're right, it follows our 4 rules. It follows a noun, it's in between the 2 commas, it gives us more info about the noun, and we can take it out of the sentence and it still makes sense. All right, I want you to move down to that third box on your notes now, and I want you to use it. Describe the most attractive man or woman in the world using an appositive to do so. Make sure it's school appropriate. If you want to describe a body part, tell me about the beautiful eyes or the beautiful smile this person has. Write it in your use it box. So there are a ton of different ways to do this. I'm just going to show you one example here. It says, Mrs. Davis, my lovely wife who always watches these videos, is the best. So let's check to make sure it follows the 4 rules that we learned. First of all, Mrs. Davis, that's a noun, so good, it's right where it should be. Second rule, it should give us more information about the noun. Mrs. Davis, well, who's that? My lovely wife who always watches these videos. Third rule, it needs to be surrounded by commas. Good, we've got that going. Fourth rule, the sentence needs to make sense even without the appositive. Mrs. Davis is the best. I want you to check your example and make sure all 4 rules fit to see if you use the appositive correctly. If you're still not sure, I want you to call your teacher over just to kind of check it to make sure you've got it done correctly. Here are some more examples in case you want to see 2 other examples. One that's kind of historical, talking about George Washington. The other talking about some guy named Phil that I made up. Your job now, add appositives to your writing to add style and flair to your writing. Don't overdo it. Nobody, especially your teachers, likes too much of a good thing. Thank you for using these style pile notes. I hope you're able to add appositives to your writing to add just a little bit of style and flair.